You are now listening to Effin Radio.
And welcome to F&B Radio. My name is Lindsay Collins, and I am your host. This show is loosely about the world of food and beverage and mostly about my neuroses. But if we're honest, that's what all podcasts are about. People don't want to admit that, but that's pretty much the facts. It's just them talking into their microphones about whatever. Every little thought that their brain has in real time. That's kind of what this is, except it is about food somehow, some way. Thank you so much for being here. We had a bad time this week. There was a heat wave, and on the very first day of the heat wave, our air conditioner went out, and it's like a running joke in my family that I keep my house as cold as like a meat locker. Like I feel like in a lot of ways, you know, I'm probably using up more air conditioner than maybe anybody else in the world. I don't want to be hot ever. I don't mind if it's hot outside because that's expected. But when I'm inside, I refuse to be uncomfortable and indoors. There's something about it that's offensive to me because if I'm going to be inside, it's got to feel different. And by different, I mean better than outside. And it just doesn't when it's hot as fuck. So the air conditioner went out and I could just see the like temperature climbing inside the house. So we just stopped everything we were doing and bailed. We just left town. Luckily, I had a client that just canceled and I had an open like day the next day. And we went to my parents' house and they had AC, thank God. And they actually happened to be out of town. So, yeah, we helped them by watching their dog, and we helped ourselves by not having to deal with me in an overheated state, because I immediately get not just angry, but like hateful, like mean to anyone in my path that's not making me cooler temperature wise. If I see someone and they're not here actively trying to make it cooler when I'm overheated, they're enemy number one. You know, that's just the way it goes. I see them as not contributing to the solution, and therefore they are the problem, even if they're not the reason that it's, 89. It got up to 89 inside my house. That's so close to 90. Like, I didn't even understand. I was like, I figured it would start to get hot, like uncomfortable. It would come up above 85. But I wasn't ready for it to like really just sail on past 86 and 87 and land comfortably at 89. And then eventually, by the time I was throwing my things into a bag, like some sort of refugee, which I realize is, there are real refugees. And I'm not making light of that. I'm just saying that's a level of dramatics that I'm at because I'm mildly inconvenienced. And I say that because that's what people would say. But in my mind, it's not a mild inconvenience. It's a downright, it's an assault on my body. My body hates to be hot. Whenever I get hot, even since I was a small child, I start to just short out. Like my brain is less functional. I pass out. I get weak. I feel like overheated and confused. Like it's not diagnosed medically by anyone, but it is my truth, and I'm sticking to it. So we got out of town, and then everything got weird because it felt like a weekend, but it wasn't a weekend. Yeah, I'm back now though, and I'm trying to figure out what day it is. I've been trying to figure out what day it is for about the last 3 days. I don't know if you guys have been feeling that, but Wednesday just kept feeling like it was supposed to be Thursday, and I was like, I'm supposed to be somewhere. But I wasn't. I was right where I was supposed to be, which was not where I'm supposed to be on Thursday. Anyway, well, going home to my parents was weird though, because we left in a rush. They weren't going to be there, so there's no one to like cook for other than ourselves. My little sister lives there, but she has her own house, so she's like, it's not like I'm staying with her. I'm staying next door to her. There's a difference. But she was amazing, and she came over and made these incredible like Old Bay shrimp Baja burritos, griddled burritos that were insane. So I didn't have to cook that night, and then I just kept not cooking, and it was cool. It was like a nice break. But every time I go my parents live in a really small town, and there's not that many places to eat that are like really good to eat. There are very good places to eat there. There's just not a lot of them. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to throw shade. It's a small town, so it can only support so many restaurants, but there's just not a lot to choose from, even in the surrounding area. Like you have to kind of travel far to get something really, really craveable and delicious, in my humble opinion. I hate when people say that. I'm like, it's not humble if you're just screaming your opinion in all caps in an acronym. Like, what's humble about that? You're literally yelling at someone. You don't sound humble to me. You seem like kind of an asshole. So let's just pretend I didn't say the humble part. But in my opinion, there's not a lot of great places to eat there, which is why we always do so much cooking. And we're all like really into cooking in my family. So it's like a win-win. It's kind of perfect. But when I come back from Williston, which is where my parents live, I have like, oh man, I think the way like some rich people have like Zillow fantasies, because I'm not rich and can't even buy a house. Like if I talk to a lender, they're just like, they just respond LOL, even in person. They're just like, they just write it on a piece of paper and stick it in my face. They're like, no, you can't. We don't know how you have a house now. You certainly can't buy another one. But every now and then, I fantasize on Zillow like real hard, like harder than any fantasy I've ever had, except for my fantasies around food that always happen after I've been sort of starved out for something really, really clutch, like that thing that you eat that makes you like, oh God, I want to eat that. That's my thing. I can't wait to eat it. And everybody has them. It doesn't even have to be like a fancy restaurant, but I feel like everyone has that one thing that's like, and it changes. I'm not saying it's like your favorite restaurant forever. It's, in my case, it's not. It definitely like waxes and wanes. And sometimes in that number one, I think of it as charts in my mind. Like I have like restaurant pop charts, but the only person that's being considered is me. It's not like what other people are into. It's just the ones that are at my top, 5 or whatever that I'm going to hit up, given the chance to get takeout. And so, yeah, it like kind of shuffles up and down. And like, sometimes there's a throwback, like sometimes we're just grooving to the oldies. Sometimes we're listening to that weird DJ list radio station that just plays a random assortment of songs in no particular order, but they're always pretty good. And then sometimes it's like super artsy and nerdy. And it's like, oh yeah. Oh, cute. Oh yeah. You like Pinback? Oh, cool. Yeah. No, they're not that popular, but they had their time and place. They make you feel something. So restaurants work like that in my mind. Like, music is a perfect analogy for that, because it's just this own personal pop chart of what I'm into, and across all different genres of food. And I hesitate to even say them on here because I don't want people to think it's like my favorite restaurants, even though they all are my favorites, because they wouldn't be in my top 5 on my chart at that given time if they weren't, at some point had been my favorite. So that's how it works. But without saying what they are, in this particular application, this was what came up. I either wanted to go to find fancy pizza. I wanted to eat at Jackrabbit Philly, which is pretty much always my number one. Like, not gonna lie, if we're talking any night of the week and you're like, where do you want to eat? It's always Jackrabbit Philly. And then I have to work around their hours and say, okay, well, that's not available to me. So I'll have to just try to carry on and go somewhere else. Taste of Thai is another one. And I'm talking for takeout. This is not like dine in, because I have kids and I don't get to dine out that much because it's a lot. And somehow I end up feeling guilty that I'm there with kids, even though they're my kids. I have to shout out Megan from Bar George, because we went to see the Jurassic Park movie last weekend. See, I've already had 2 weekends, so I'm utterly confused. But we went on Saturday, Jurassic Park, the last, whatever, the Invisible Kingdom. That's not it. But my son is a huge Jurassic Park fan, and it's literally like I bought special tickets to go and see the showtime, the matinee on Saturday when the paleontologist was going to be there speaking. Shout out to Keegan, my pal, who DM'd me that was even happening at the Terrace Theater. And it was so cool. But without getting too deep into the story, we went to the movie and then we got out and Bar George was just opening. And I was like, let's go over there and take the kids for donuts. And it was me and my kids and Jeremy, and then AK and her sons met us over there because Leo had been at the movie. These are people you don't know, and I'm just talking about them like you do know them, but I know them, and that's what matters because this is my podcast. And so we got there and we're like 3 adults and I want to say 5 kids, right? So we're outnumbered by children and we're sitting on the patio like a bunch of assholes waiting for them to open, which is a huge no-no. And I'm aware of that, but it's not like we were sitting there looking at our watches frustrated. That's what people don't understand. It's fine to wait outside a restaurant, in my opinion, in IMOH, IMHO, IMHO'd. Is that what they're trying to say? Is this a secret? Like, is this one of those things where it's like, can you spell I cup? And you're like, I see you. Oh, I hate it here. IMHO. That's what they're saying when they say, in my humble opinion. I just figured it out. Now I'm really not going to say it anymore. But in my personal world, I don't mind that people are outside waiting. I think it's a good sign for your restaurant. It means a restaurant is desirable, popular, cool, whatever you want to say. What I don't like is when they are old and they're sticking their face into the glass to try to look in, trying to see if you're being lazy in there. That's always the feeling that I get. It's never like, y'all need anything? Could we help you get started? From a genuine place. It's like, why aren't they open? They're probably already close to being open. It's 3 minutes till. Couldn't they just unlock the door? And you're like, man, you guys don't know anything about show business. You don't just rip up the curtain when one person shows up. You make them wait. You dim the lights. You have some ceremoniousness about it. Ceremoniousness? How about some pomp and circumstance? If I could do that over, if I gave a fuck and edited this podcast, I would do it over and just make it seamlessly say pomp and circumstance. But we're just gonna forge ahead. Yeah, I just don't. If you're old and you're just doing it to be you think that we're just in there fucking around, maybe they are, but for the most part, we need every second to finish cutting limes, to check tables, to light candles, to get the music right, to wake up the hostess or host, to find all of the servers that are outside smoking. I'm turning this into a stereotype, and now people are like, I knew it. That's why I look in there and give them the shade. But here we are, just a bunch of kids, mostly under the age of 8. And we're just hanging out on the patio. And they were so sweet. And they came out and Megan was like, oh, man, it's you. What's up? I thought it was a bunch of people with kids and I wasn't excited about that. And then I was excited because it was you and your kids. And whether or not she meant it, I felt like she meant it and it meant a lot to me. And then she proceeded to fly out some donuts and some chili dogs. And we were on our merry way in less than 20 minutes. So when I do go out with kids, I'm considerate. I try to make it as painless as possible for the establishment, which is why we get a lot of takeout. But the idea, and I thought about this because I course corrected when we got home all day long. I had been fantasizing and sort of looking at the top charts in my takeout brain, being like, what am I going to order? Fantasizing hard about it, really getting into it, down to what items I'm going to order, not just what style of food I'm into or what I feel like eating tonight or what sounds good to me. Actually, role playing, okay, I'm placing the order, what's on the ticket type of scenario. And I set a rule that, of course, I always make all these rules just so I can break them and be like, I'm the boss of my own life. I don't need to follow rules. But my rule lately has been to dial back the amount of times that I buy takeout during the week. Weekends are fine. If you don't want to cook on the weekends, I get it. And oftentimes that's when I have the most time to dedicate to projects, but it's also when I'm the most tired. But it's just a slippery slope, especially when you live in Charleston or a place like Charleston where there's so many different delicious, amazing places around. And post-COVID, so many people still do takeout that really would never have done takeout until the pandemic happened because they're not too good, but I don't know. It just wasn't part of their business model. And so you're like, oh my God, the fact that you can get takeout from these kind of restaurants, like Jackrabbit Philly, for instance, you're like, how do you even, this is such a miracle. Every time I eat it, I'm like, I can't believe I can order this to go. This is amazing. But it's a slippery fucking slope because there's so many places to eat that I could really fill up every single night and just be like, oh, I'm not even tired of any of this stuff yet. Like I'm just living my dreams. And it feels like you could do that in theory, but eventually I reach a point where I feel just hopeless, like disgusting. Not because of the food I'm eating is so bad. There's just something that's so hard to reconcile when you're like, I spent so much money just to like avoid feeding myself. Like back in the day when people were just sort of evolving into humans, like it was like you had to literally risk your life to eat. Not just work and shell out money and like be sad because you hate your job and then spend your job, all the money you make at your job that you hate buying food. Or is that just me? It's worse than that because you're like, this is like the people used to literally risk their lives and sometimes not come back. And it was like, oh man, we were going to have wild boar, but so-and-so didn't make it home. That's how hard it was to feed yourself. And now it's so easy to feed yourself such elaborate things that it just sorts of like starts to wear on my conscience when I'm just like lazily lobbing food into my mouth. Like, oh, what amazing thing have you made me? What amazing oh, what you making over there? That looks amazing. I'll have some of that. It just starts to feel like maybe you are like a cat that's been declawed. You know, like this isn't healthy for you. Eventually this is going to affect you in ways that you can't even foresee. So I try to cap how many times a week that I eat takeout. And I've tried to basically keep it to one or not at all. Like say like, okay, I'm going to cook all throughout the week and then I'm going to eat takeout on the weekends if I choose. And so we had just sort of set that like on the way home when we were driving to my parents' house, fleeing from the, lack of AC in my home. We talked about all this, me and Jeremy, and we were like, you know what? It's just, if we're out of control, like we need to dial it in. We need to rein it in, stop getting takeout so much. And because of it, I had just like gnarly, unending, vicious cravings for takeout food. I fantasized about it all day. And then eventually was about to pull the trigger on one of my top 3, one that stays in my top 3. I'm not going to say what it is because like I said, it doesn't matter. It's not relevant to like whether or not you should go there. It's personal. And was getting ready to order and I was like, you know what? No, I have food here. And I made food. And I came back so hard from what was going to be, another night being like, you let yourself down. You're a declawed kitten. You're a declawed takeout kitten who just has no restraint. I turned it around. I made an amazing chickpea curry stew, which is one of my go-tos with tons of greens and Greek yogurt and mint and olive oil and scallion and toasted naan. And I was so happy. Not that I didn't like get what I wanted. It wasn't like some sadistic shit like that. Like, oh, it feels so good to tell yourself no. It was more like, it just felt really good to be like, don't be a dummy, Don't just take control of your life. You don't, just because you can get takeout or you like on paper can get takeout doesn't mean you should. Sometimes I sit here and think about like this, like, who's going to pay me to retire? No one. I don't have any, and I've never had any kind of job where I have a 401k. I don't even understand how they work. I'm like, truly, I'm not exaggerating. I don't understand how they work. Like somehow Jeremy still has a 401k from another job. And I'm like, what? How do you, how? But no one's going to ever give me money to retire. So essentially I'm eating up my retirement, physically eating it every single night. And I know how to cook. It would be different if I was one of those people that's just like, eating frozen food or something, because they literally don't know how to cook, don't have any interest in cooking, or don't want to cook, or can't cook. Any one of those things that stop them from being able to make food for themselves. But I'm like, I can make restaurant quality food. I just don't want to, or I just had a hard day. Like that just, I don't know. I pushed through. I came out on the other side. I probably will still go to said top charted restaurant in my personal charts this weekend, because once it's in my craw, once it's in my head, I almost can't not satiate it. It's like there's a law in music where if you hear a certain note, it needs resolution, or your brain just can't handle it. It's like bam, 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 bam. It doesn't want to end there. It wants to be like bam, 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 bam. It just wants to end there, and that feels complete. and that's how it is when I get a craving, like I have. But I did push through. I feel much more satiated. I feel much more energetic than I would have. And I'm here to do the show. And basically that was the whole show. I'm gonna like try to like muster up some more energy, because I did eat a lot of leafy greens. But for the most part, that kind of was the show. And if you're new to the show, you're like, what? It's just one long introduction. And you're right. You're not wrong. Unless you listened to last week's episode with Mari Swarza, Beth Stelling. It was a real good time. Beth Stelling, first of all, is insanely hilarious. If you caught the show at Music Farm, man, so good. We had such a blast. She's truly one of the most talented comedians that's on the scene working today. I'm not saying that just because I like happen to have her on the show. I just think that. I think there's just, I don't know, nobody like her. She's amazing. It was a really great show, and it was fun to have her and Mari on the show, because at its core, F&B Radio is a comedy podcast. Like, I don't know. It's never been like a serious journalistic endeavor at like covering food stories. We do talk about serious things, and sometimes, especially now that it's just me, I get in my feelings. I talk about things, but it just feels good to have comedians on the show, because it always felt like, especially if you've been listening to the show since the beginning, the goal of the show was always to make other people in food and beverage laugh. That was it. It wasn't to be like groundbreaking or, poignant, or I said that badly, but you know what I mean? Poignant. It was just trying to make other people in the industry laugh. And so making people laugh, whether you're in the industry or not, I think is one of the funniest things that you can do. So having comedians on like Mari and Beth was really, really fun. If you haven't checked that episode out, go back and listen to it. If you haven't rated the show, go back and do that. It really, really, really helps. It really does. I'm going to start, if it's like an incentive, I will read your review on the show, even though that makes me feel weird. I want to find another way to highlight you, the reviewer, and something that you do. Maybe I'll review you back. Like I'll review your review and say what I think about you as a kindness for you doing the same for me. Because there's no real option to return the favor unless I know who you are. I know that you have a podcast, and then I could do the same. But I'm like, there's not like, I can't return the favor. And I want to, because it means so much to me, and they make me so happy and help people find the show. So yeah, if I just don't want to read your reviews, because then it sounds like I'm being like jerking my own, proverbial penis. Like or I don't know, masturbating. I don't know why I had to be like a proverbial penis. The heat boiled my brain, and it's just all proverbial penises now. But I don't want to just sit there and be like, Lindsay's so cool. Every time I listen to this show, I just think, wow, Lindsay's so great. That makes me feel like a psycho. So I'm not going to do that. I do love to read them, because honestly, sometimes they bring tears to my eyes. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe you not only listened, but took the time to write your thoughts down. I know how much that takes in this day and age. So I'm going to do a reverse review. You write a review for me, and then I'll review your review by saying something that I like about whoever I think you are. Okay? What else? Oh, I'm on TikTok. I've been on TikTok, and then I got disgusted with TikTok and was like, I can't fucking do this. And so I stopped posting on TikTok. And then this week, if you follow the show on Instagram, which is at fnbradio.com. No, it's not. It's at fnbradio. I started posting more reels. It's just like, I think if you're posting photos on Instagram now, like your friends are laughing at you. I think deep in their hearts, your friends are like, what? Is she okay? As much as I hate to admit it, no one's there to look at your photos anymore. It doesn't matter how good they are. Like, people don't give a shit. They want to see a video. Not necessarily a video of you pointing to a bunch of different words. Definitely not that. But video is the future. So I got like gung-ho about it and was like, oh my God, I'm going to post a reel every day. And that only lasted 3 days. But I did put them on TikTok. And I'm going to try to post slightly different content there, like with some voiceovers or whatever the fuck TikTok wants, and then see how that goes. So if you're also reluctantly on TikTok or enthusiastically on TikTok, I'm not hating the player or anything like that. So if you're on TikTok too, I want to see what you're up to on TikTok too. And follow me. It's at FNB Radio. That's EFFINBRADIO. FNB Radio. And thank you so much for listening. My air is fixed, but I feel like you know that, or I wouldn't be doing this podcast. I would be melted into a puddle like the Wicked Witch of the West. I love you. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next week. Bye. 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 Bye.